Good morning, world. Good morning, Daily Huddle live studio. My name is Giovanni Gonzalez, and I am honored to be with you one more day. Episode number, Sorrel, what's the episode number? 40?
40!
40!
Wow. Awesome.
Episode number 40. And we have created this conversation. We call it the Daily Huddle, and the opportunity of the conversations to give you a powerful context to start your day. And we say here that the way you start your day gives you the rest of your day, and the way that you live each day gives you the rest of your life. And the Daily Huddle is here to empower you to live the rest of your life powerfully. I get to co-host the Daily Huddle with the #1 executive coach expert, Mr. Sorrel Catan. Good morning, Sorrel.
Good morning, Giovanni, and I get to co-host the Daily Huddle with my TLC. That is the #1 transformational leadership coach in the world. Giovanni, thank you for being my co-host. Thank you for being my friend. And thank you for being, given, driven, and, the Daily Huddle is your life. I love it. So thank you for being here, everyone. And especially thank you for being here, Reginald. I get the honor to introduce you today. Reginald is a longtime friend and a fellow Haitian. And Reginald is one of the premier consultants on the face of this planet. Now I'm going to read Reginald's bio to you, and you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. Now, Reggie was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. His family history dates back to its independence. This guy's my ancestor. Reg is an American citizen and a veteran of our armed services. He has over 25 years of leadership and consulting experience across industries and continents, from startups to Fortune 500, Fortune 100, with roles spanning strategic planning, business transformation, product development and management, business technology integration, operations management, and performance and engineering. A central theme of his career, and I've attested to that in numerous conversations with Reginald, is that he's committed to transforming companies and organizations by assisting them to become market-led, financially driven enterprises through the effective integration of people, process, and technology. Reginald, I am so honored to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
And Reginald is also the founder and creator of two companies. One's called eDea. eDea was founded to help companies large and small across industry sectors improve financial and operating performance. He also leads a company called deep expertise in enterprise transformation and the effective application of technology to solve complex business and societal problems. He's a technologist, he's a human, he loves humanity, and he loves you, and you'll see it. Reggie, welcome to the Daily Huddle. Good morning, my friend.
Thank you so much, Soledad and Giovanni and everyone else. It's a great opportunity to meet all of you.
Reggie.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can hear you well.
Okay.
And it was scratchy for a little bit.
What's that?
It was scratching for a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's great to connect with the business community and respect social distancing. So thank you for this. Giovanni, should I share my screen now? Or is
yes, go ahead.
Let me do that. I know we have a limited time, so I'd like to plunge in.
We're seeing your screen, so
okay.
All is well.
Well, I think, I certainly wanted to make the topic germane to the current circumstance that we're all dealing with. But I think I'd also like to call out that it really speaks to a problem that companies face every day throughout almost any time. And as we go through this, I'd like to make sure that we not only address the immediate concern and challenges that businesses have, but to take a broader view as well. It's not just getting through the current crisis. It's a question of how do we use this opportunity to create stronger companies. So a lot of this is not going to be particularly new to you, but change isn't predictable, right? But we do know that I'm sorry, there's something going on my screen here. But we do know that change has to be dealt with continuously, right? The crisis that we face is just change happening fast. Are we prepared for it? And also, change is really reality checking in, and it has a way of finding weaknesses in a company. So I guess the immediate challenge is how do we survive and leverage the moment to make stronger companies? There are a lot of factors that are continuously working to undermine the performance of your company, its integrity, that sometimes threaten its very existence, right? And the ability to recognize those and address those is an ongoing problem. And there's a lot more that can be added to this list, I'm sure you all know very well. And there's a lot of telltale signs. But I think the alarming thing is I work with a lot of different companies across industry sectors, is how often the problems and the telltale signs of developing problems become accepted as business as usual. And that's where the problem really begins. You know, a lot of the changes that we encounter, even ones like now, oftentimes gave us pretty clear forewarnings. And how many companies are really structured to identify those things that are coming up on the horizon and be prepared to act to them? And you know, sort of the knee-jerk response that most companies have is to immediately go to cost cutting. But you know, cost cutting is often not very well thought through. Yeah, there is a sense of urgency, and sometimes a sense of survival even, right? But still, I think this presents an opportunity to really visit those weaknesses that the crisis is actually helping us realize exist. And I think a question that I often bring out in discussions with clients is it really necessary to have a company that only responds to crises after it's occurred, right? Why did we let those weaknesses persist well before the crisis actually occurred? And I think the other key finding here that I want to call out is the need to really question business as usual, and how often companies just carry very large degrees of waste through their daily operations, and managing that waste becomes somebody's job. It becomes almost culturalized. And think of the implications that has for business, the impact on profitability, the impact on competitiveness, that companies just accept as normal, right? And that's, I think, a key lesson from crises. These things inevitably set us up for bigger challenges than even the ones that we're encountering. We have to be able to adapt. So how do we adapt and how do we respond to crisis beyond just cost cutting, right? Very few companies have functioning teams designed to look at a company holistically, designed to identify and address change. And sort of the common word I know that Giovanni and Sorel will both respond to, in the need for continuous transformation. What we're talking about here is evolution. So I think there's a very significant opportunity that this crisis presents to go back to fundamentals, to look at those things that have been undermining our company, and again, to challenge the assumptions that we're operating on. I think another major problem that companies deal with is, and often don't recognize, is, are they looking at the right data? Oftentimes I'm surprised at the data companies look at or don't look at, or the things that they undervalue. I think one of the most striking things to me in a client I was recently working with, $1 billion managed services company with 1,800 products that they were selling indiscriminately to their marketplace. I asked one of the finance directors, how does profitability span across individual products? He said, "Oh, that really doesn't matter. We're profitable overall." My God, that is a scary statement coming from somebody in finance, right? But they thought they were looking at the right data, but the question is, were they really? And think of the lost opportunity to strengthen a company by carrying 1,800 products poorly managed, the burden that imposes on a sales force, and the lost opportunity to strengthen margins and cash flow. It's enormous, but that was business as usual. I guess one of the things that this points to is ID your profit and service drivers and work them. This is a great time to do that because, yes, we want to eliminate waste. We want to become more productive. We want to be able to survive through this. But we can use this to really streamline our companies and use it as an opportunity to eliminate waste, create new capabilities, potentially by shifting resources. Let's stop wasting time on unproductive activities. You know, business is complex, right? And this simple model represents any number of businesses, right? And I think a lot of companies focus on managing the silos. And that is another, I think, major area of opportunity to address the weaknesses that these crises expose. Working the silos are important, but one of the things I've found is that a lot of companies work on optimizing the silos. It's sort of, focusing on local problems, but neglecting the larger global need. Tremendous opportunities exist by making sure that the interrelationship between silos, for example, between product and process, infrastructure and process, and certainly product and the supporting systems, the lack of addressing those interfaces, I think, creates a lot of hidden cost that come out like a bear when the company's faced with significant external or internal challenges. These present, though, immediate opportunities to improve the business. And I've tried to call out some areas here that I see repeated again and again and again. One, the product mix. For many companies, products and services go in, they never come out. But just think of the implications that imposes on processes and systems and how difficult it makes it to introduce new products and services. Think of the implication for a sales force that has to manage a product portfolio of hundreds of products. How do you communicate, and your poor clients that have to figure out what you're actually trying to sell? An enormous opportunity for business gain. And think of the processes that so many companies operate in or with. The tedium that they introduce, the fragmented data, the throw it over the walls syndrome, right? Again, opportunities to substantially improve the business. I've seen many companies also with infrastructure that's been deployed, multi-million-dollar platforms that are being utilized at a 10% rate. My God, what a wasted investment. And a lot of times those platforms can make an extraordinary difference for the business, not only in terms of operating performance, but also service performance and competitiveness. So here's a time to look at where those weaknesses are, not just to cut employees because it's the easy, low-hanging fruit, supposedly, to recover resources and move ahead. A lot of times those things will actually weaken you. So take a deep look at your current operations, go back to fundamentals, work those silos, align those silos to become a more market-led, financially driven company. So knowing your business, it's kind of everybody's responsibility. And I think, sort of another opportunity here is, how many companies really understand profitability? And I don't just mean, your gross and operating margins. I mean, the real drivers of that profitability, not just producing financial reports and P&L statements, but really tying that deeply into your key performance indicators. Are you structuring your organization to work that profitability? And this chart that many of you are probably familiar with, a DuPont chart, is one I often use in enterprise. Let's break it down. What's adding to revenue growth? What's helping us streamline operations and improve productivity? are we really leveraging the full capabilities of our infrastructure, or do we have idle infrastructure that we can get rid of? These numbers are actually coming right out of a project I did for, let's just say, a large international software company. Because they were just relying on business as usual, they were generating 3 to 5% margins on a service contract that they were providing. And they were facing very significant competitive threat. It's a $300 million contract. Not a lot of love for losing that. So in working closely with them and helping them address those fundamentals, these are the opportunities we found to improve profitability and performance. They were operating for 4 years, operating on 3 to 5% margins. Imagine what they could have done with those additional resources to manage through a crisis. Your business drivers, work them, align your organization to realizing them. I guess some of the key lessons here, I'm trying to be sensitive to time, is don't be a company driven by crisis. Get ahead of it. Make sure that planning, finance, and operations aren't just organizations that are providing checks and balances for each other, but actually working with that shared sense of responsibility and driving profitability, operating performance, and service levels. A key takeaway is, I guess, here is don't work silos, align them. A great area of weakness for so many companies. And also look at the data that you're using to manage your business. It may not be the right data, and also data evolves. The data you need today may not be the data that you need tomorrow. It has to be actively managed. And we hear a lot about business intelligence and dashboards and balanced scorecards. Those aren't idle topics. When companies implement and use them effectively, it makes them stronger companies. So in the end, work to become a lean company. Again, not just a marketing statement. It has real business impact. If it's part of the philosophy, part of your culture, to drive productive change and continuous improvement. It really does lead to significant competitive advantage and preserves the resources to manage through crisis and come out ahead. So please, change is continuous. Get ahead of it.
Reginald, thank you. Thank you. And with the Fortune 100 companies you've worked with, there's a ton, well, there's a boat right here. There's a boatload of experience and a lot of things that you've seen that companies deal with that are directly applicable to small businesses, solopreneurs, and others. So I'm wondering, in the live studio audience, who would ask a question to now pivot a bit and say, how does all this, Reggie, apply to me or somebody else who's in business for themselves and they have one employee, maybe themselves, or 50, and they're not a Fortune 100. Yeah. How do those lessons apply there?
Right, and I think these findings and these problems I've seen across company. The business fundamentals are universal, right? We're not a large company. We're not a Fortune 500 or a 100 company. I've seen the same set of problems in local yoga outfits, right? People who provide yoga services to schools and affinity groups and small businesses. These are universal findings, right? The similarities between large and small business, I think, are much stronger than people will recognize.
I realize that. That is awesome. And wanted to create that and now open it to you in the studio audience and you on Facebook Live. You have a top of the world consultant with you right now. What questions do you have? Giovanni, you're first, and then who else?
Okay, great. So
awesome.
Ronald, that definitely, Reginald, sorry, that really elevated my thinking, and I think everyone here in the studio audience appreciates how you much elevated our thinking. I think one of the things that I took away that I really, really liked was that concept. I forgot how you framed it, but I'm going to say it wrong. Cutting down costs can truly substantially weaken your company. And I've noticed that there's a conversation in the marketplace that it's about cutting costs, and there is not really looking at that data that actually supports the impact of cutting costs anywhere just because we're cutting costs. So anyway, I really like that you created that conversation, that was a conversation starter. And I don't have a question yet, just a comment.
Thank you, Giovanni.
All right. Go ahead, Eric.
By the way, Cyril, you beat me to it with your question, but I can see how some of this stuff could apply. Thank you, Reginald. Really good content.
Thank you.
And it also might apply if we're working with larger companies. We can kind of integrate that when we're kind of determine how this could help them. But a question I would have is in terms of the people aspect, and what we're going through is really impacting people at a kind of deep level, stress and uncertainty and all that stuff. Is there anything you would advise in terms of how people, specifically, it might be business owners or it might be employees in a company, how can they deal with this in a really effective way?
Right. I think maybe there's a couple of dimensions to this. You know, organizations evolve incrementally over time, and they often reinforce that whole business as usual concept, kind of reinforcing the cultures and the bad practices. And the need for organizations to kind of look at their structure to see how well it aligns with serving their market, right? And it's not management against sort of the rank and file or the employees actually doing the work. The need to collaborate is strong. I think another key finding, and this was working with a large regional telco that was coming out of bankruptcy, right? Management distrusted its employees, and this was a union shop on top of that, right? And the union wasn't exactly cooperating with management. Nobody wins there. Where we were able to break that pattern was when we identified individuals who were advocates for change. And they spanned across both management and the rank and file, right? In fact, some of the most impactful people I got to work with, who actually knew more about the business than many of the people that they were reporting to, right, made the greatest difference. When we could bring the two communities together, that really drove change. And I think an important piece is to identify those individuals that have the business insight, who are very much fans of the company. They're like company patriots, right? They want the company to succeed. They span different organizations and levels and functions. To be able to identify those early on, and certainly during times of crisis, is important. Eliminate put the naysayers out of the way until we can bring them along, right? And I think too, when you see practices that absolutely undermine companies, like a legal services company I was working with, they thought that quality control was checking the same thing multiple times. My God, think of the waste that drives, and that actually tremendously limited their ability to scale. So I think invest in your workforce, establish a collaborative environment around that, structure your organization so that responsibilities are clear, and accountability and transparency and the mechanisms to do that are also established. But build trust is key.
Great, thank you for that.
Sheila, you have your hand up, and then we have a question from Facebook Live.
Okay, great. So thank you for your presentation. You know, one of the things I really got from your presentation, it's myself and one person. So I really don't have my business structure in this way at all. This wasn't even on the radar. So do you suggest, like, you know, it's like I'm in formulation. And do you suggest that we structure and set up, you had a chart with the profits and the revenue, the chart with the, do you recommend that you do that even when you first start your business?
I may have an unconventional view on that.
Okay.
You know, I guess, you know, being an engineer says I'd much rather be doing 80% design and 20% build than the other way around. Uh, because when you do it the other way around, you never finish building. It's always chaos. It's always firefighting, right? So there's absolute value in sitting down and working through how this is going to work. But one guarantee, you're going to get it wrong. Right? But it's part of the process of starting to learn and asking the right questions and evolving. Again, that whole process and mechanism for change begins at that very spot. But at least you have a sense of where you're going, right? And you have a means to identify where are the problems and where are your weaknesses, right? You're not going to have answers to everything. The caution is, you don't want to go into analysis paralysis. You know, being an MBA and loving spreadsheets and business modeling, you know, those are important skills not to be belittled, but you can't let those hamstring you either, right? They're tools. They will never model reality. There are many people who obsess about it, and, you know, I've been in many organizations where that happens. A lot of consulting firms do that, right? But it's really a mechanism to draw insights and to lay out plans and check to see, am I on track? How do I anticipate what can go wrong and what can go right and manage to those? So invest the time in doing that, but know when to stop and start building things and leverage the mistakes that you make to get ahead.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome, Reginald. And there's another Reginald watching you on Facebook Live, and he asks, will working at home impact the overall culture of large organizations? If so, how?
I think it's an important societal test. You know, it's a different time with the availability of technology. It becomes a much easier problem to handle. I think a lot of time and energy is poorly applied by thinking that you have to be on top of people for them to be productive. If that's the type of employee you have, you got the wrong type of employee, right? I think it's a question of having in the right management controls, but also trusting in your people. I think it's a tremendous boon to productivity, an opportunity for productivity. I think there is absolute value in bringing teams together. You know, sessions like this show that there is clearly an opportunity for dialogue. It also keeps people focused, right, on delivering value. Water cooler conversations are fun and important. But just think of how many hours you've lost when somebody's keeping you by the water cooler or coming into your cube, right, talking about the latest sports news. That is important. But remote work helps, I think, can help, not necessarily, can help companies focus on the right outcomes and fully leveraging their people and trusting. And the underperformers, people who are exploiting these opportunities inappropriately, you know, in some ways, they'll be more easily identified and coached.
Reggie, there's one last question, a follow-on. How should employees prepare for post-COVID-19 world?
I think it's the realization that there's also a need for continuous improvement, to build your skill sets, to learn how to use technology, to become a problem solver, not a problem to solve, right? Don't rest on your laurels. Be very attentive to the need to self-improve, to make yourselves of more value to your employers and to demonstrate that value. To build your personal brand, I think, is also important. And know too that there's a lot more economic options. We have certainly entered into the quote unquote gig economy that's rife with problems. If your skills are too narrow, if you're too dependent on one particular industry or one particular function. So try to diversify as well as build your skill sets and network.
Perfect, perfect. Well, we're right at the top of the half hour, Reggie. Giovanni, anything you need to say before Reginald has his last word?
Oh, this was really phenomenal, Reginald. Really like thought-provoking. I love the become a problem solver, not a problem to solve, right? Thank you, Reginald. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to have an insight on who I am, right? And just to really thank you for elevating all of us and in the context of businesses and looking at myself as well as looking at my small business as a large business, and at the same time giving a really powerful insight on, you know, work on the ship work on the train while it's running, right? Don't get stuck with stopping the train. So thank you so much for being here. Sorel, that is it for me. Thank you everyone from Facebook, and thank you for everyone who's at the live studio. Reginald, what are your last words?
I think you're all in unique positions as business leaders to make a difference and to help people manage through this change. It's also an opportunity for just tremendous innovation and rethinking how you do business to optimize it to these new times. Take it with gusto, take it as a challenge and an opportunity, and I think we'll all be better off for it.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you, Reginald. Thank you for being on the Daily Huddle. Driven change. Does it create opportunities to improve how you do business? And I guess it does. Reginald, thank you. Everyone in the live virtual audience, thank you. Sheila, Laura K, Giovanni, Danette, we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.
Great day too. Bye.
Thank you. Very informative.